Now we're getting ready to go down and knock some pins down, but we first got to choose a bowling ball that we want to use.
Right, and when you're a new bowler, you want to look behind the lanes. They usually have an array of house balls, and they're numbered by weight, and that's kind of the tricky thing when you're a new bowler, is to figure out what the right weight is for you.
Now, they have different colors to correspond with those weights, but a lot of bowlers, the first time, they end up buying or picking up a ball that is too light for them.
Right, and I think the other thing that you really want to be careful about, even when you're determining the right weight, is making sure that your fingers and your thumb will go in easily. A lot of times, the lighter weights are meant for younger, smaller kids, and the finger holes and thumb holes are small.
So some of the techniques or some of the systems that kind of match up the right weight for you is kind of base it off your body weight and your body mass. If you are 160 pounds, so you probably want to use a 14 to a 16 pound ball. If you're like 110, 120 pounds, 10 to 12 pound ball.
And I think what's always really interesting about that is, as you progress in the game and you go to the pro shop and look to buy your own ball, usually you can handle a heavier ball when it's fit and measured for you specifically. But when we're looking at house balls, you usually have to go a little bit lighter than what you would imagine you can handle, just because they don't fit you quite as well with your hands and your thumb.
But that doesn't mean to go too light, because if you go too light, it's hard to have a consistent swing, because really, to be able to have accuracy in the game, you want to have a consistent swing and the ball going back and forth. You want that ball to have some weight so it actually swings your arm. You don't want your arm actually swinging the ball, because then you can manipulate it too much and that ball can go anywhere.
Right, and the other problem I think with going too light is that we tend to sort of overthrow it, or in the end, actually, that's what we're doing. We're throwing the ball as opposed to rolling it, and you get more deflection, and it really isn't to your advantage to go with a lighter weight and throwing it harder.
I think that's the key, is getting the ball to roll off your hand. So when you're picking up the ball, you want to pick it up at least at waist level, and you want to kind of put your hand in underhand, kind of roll the ball onto your hand so that it will roll off, as opposed to just throwing it and letting go, because it's like a knuckleball in baseball. That can go anywhere.
Right, I had a student in last week, and still fairly new bowler, and one of the things that we picked up that I'd missed the last couple of times in is he would just sort of jam his hand into the ball, and we were always struggling with a consistent release and getting his hand to be relaxed enough that he could roll it, and he was throwing it. And I think that's one of the great tips that you always talk about, is what you putting your fingers in and then rolling the ball to your hand really allows your hand to stay nice and relaxed, and a more consistent release is most likely.
Yeah, it's very common that they'll pick up the ball off the rack and they just grab the ball right from the top of the rack, pick it up, hold it to their side, and then they go down and throw it. And that ball can be going anywhere then. I mean, that one little tip alone will give you an increased accuracy and consistency of knocking down those pins. These house balls, what are they made out of?
Well, they're plastic, really, what we call them, or polyester balls is what the bowling ball is made of, and it really isn't meant to do much on the lane. I mean, it's just sort of whatever you do to it is what you're going to see. You're not going to see a lot of change of direction. You're not going to see it doesn't create much friction with the lane, so they're going to go fairly straight.
They're built to last. They're built to last, and with the oil in the lanes and surface, we don't want them to wear out. Thus, they're not going to have a lot of traction. So the plastic balls are really good for beginners that just starting out, but eventually you probably want to get your own bowling ball and get to one of the newer surface and newer materials that actually has a little gripping to the lane surface.
Right. I mean, when I first started, I started with a plastic ball, and then over the years, as the game has progressed, and they've figured out how to make balls a little bit more reactive and roll better on the lanes, and with the amount of oil that's out on the lanes, we went to urethane, and then from urethane we went to a more resin cover of the bowling ball that even reads the lanes better, which allows your ball to hook more and more.
It's very hard material, but it's not. Plastic balls are very slick, and these are very grippy. They're going to really want to grab and gives you a lot of traction. So after the ball gets out of that oil, the first 2/3 of the lane on the back end, it can actually have some traction and drive through the pins and then be able to hook. These balls are very hard to get a bowler to actually hook the ball.
So when you think about when you come back and you've thrown the ball on the lane, usually there's a line of oil that's pretty much just stays on top of the plastic ball. But when we get to these more resin bowling balls, they're meant to kind of absorb that oil, and that's really the difference too. You can see a difference in just how they feel as well as how they react on the lane.
And when I was in the pro shop business, I got asked a lot, do you buy a ball first or the shoes? And that's kind of the chicken and egg, because having your own shoes is very important, but having your own ball is very important. It's almost like you have to get them both. So in conclusion, it's important that you get the right kind of ball matched up to you when you're out there bowling, and weight is the number one thing we want to be concerned with.
Right, and oftentimes they'll have lighter weights behind the front desk, so anything from 6 pounds all the way to 16, which is the heaviest bowling ball that's manufactured that you're allowed to use.
But unless you're 10 years or younger, you probably shouldn't be using those 8 or lighter bowling balls. And they make a 16, but not a lot of bowlers need to be using it. But that range between 10 and 14, 15 is probably the range you want to be using.